นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ Blessings to you all. As you heard in the guided meditation, we've just passed by the annual day we commemorate the death of Luang Por Chah, our teacher, 16th of January. So I was fortunate enough to be able to travel to Thailand, which I haven't done for 2 years. I went with Venerable Dhamma Witiko, and it was an opportunity to go and visit some of our teachers there, including go to Wat Bo Pong where Ajahn Chah lived for the event on the 16th of January. So I say it's a bit like Chinese New Year for monks. Get a chance to go and see our extended monk family, Sangha family. And that's important in our practice, to visit fellow practitioners, Kalyana Mitta, whenever we get the chance. And because of COVID, there hasn't always been the chance. But things are a little bit relaxed, or they were relaxed. They've gone tight again now for Thailand, but they were relaxed when we applied to travel. So we were ourselves blessed with the chance to go and visit our teachers there, catch up, spend time with fellow samanas, fellow monastics. And I think everyone would agree, whether you're a layperson or a monastic, this is a part of our life that is both enjoyable and informative, because you learn, supportive emotionally, and in terms of Dhamma, it supports your practice. And it is part of the practice. And as Venerable Ananda, this is often quoted, talking to the Buddha, suggested, I think the role of Kalyana Mitta, having noble friends, good friends in the practice, is so important. It's at least half of the practice. And the Buddha said, no, don't say that, Ananda, it's the whole of the practice. This is something that you appreciate more and more over the years, practicing the Dhamma, that having Kalyana Mitta gives you both a reflection. You have the reflection from your teachers and friends. They can be inspiring. They can teach you Dhamma that you didn't hear before, or just remind you of Dhamma that you've forgotten. And they give you a sort of standard for your own practice, to gauge your own practice. Because until we're established in our practice, we forget, we get lost, we stray from the path sometimes. So meeting living teachers, living practitioners, is all of the path in the end, as the Buddha said. We need this input in whatever way we can. So of course it's different or difficult at the moment because of travel restrictions and distance, but at least we have technology to help us out. That's good as well. But there's something that you don't get from technology, isn't it? Just living Dhamma, living, breathing people, events, bringing people together. Whether it's just sitting, having a cup of tea together and a chat, or meditating together, listening to a talk together, as monks, going on alms round together, receiving alms from the laity, so the sense of gratitude to them. So for me, going to Thailand, it's like you're meeting old friends who have supported you in the past. So there's the appreciation of support you've gained in the past for your practice. And I've been a monk 37 years now, so that's many years of support. And I lived in Thailand about 18 years, so it's half of that time I spent in the robes was in Thailand. Started there, received my training there, my initial support. So for me, it's always a time of gratitude and appreciation. Quite naturally, those thoughts arise. Memories of people who have helped me, people I've helped. That mutual supportive thing between monks, nuns, and laity. We help each other. And you like two hands or two things that support each other. You can't have one without the other. We, as monks, the way Ajahn Chah taught, we're very strict in our discipline, our vinaya, so we don't store food or we don't have money. We have lay people who look after the funds of the monastery, which are offered into a central fund, and they support whether it's the whole Sangha with the building of monasteries and expenses, or individual monks who may have medical needs or travel needs or whatever. The laity raise the funds, offer the funds, look after the funds. They provide the food. As Ajahn Chah said, all we have is a bowl and robes. So that's our way of earning our living. We go out wearing our robes, which come from the Buddha. They're not really our robes. Even I wear this robe, I don't really think it's mine. I look after it, thinking it belongs to the Buddha, the goodness of the Buddha. My bowl, I use it. I was offered it, but I treat it as though it's come from the Buddha. So I really have nothing as a monk in this world, materially. The teachings we get come from the Buddha originally, and then in a more recent era from Ajahn Chah. So we recollect the teacher regularly with gratitude, the techniques of practice, samatha, vipassana, the monastic training that we use, the form, has come from Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Mun in the recent era, and then links back to the Buddha. So everything we use, whether it's spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, materially, it's all from somewhere else. So basically we're like babies, you could say. You come into the spiritual world and you're reborn. As a monk, I was reborn in Ubon on the 1st of October 1985. I became a monk. In November 1984, December 1984, became a novice monk. Before that, an anagarika. So that was like my rebirth in this world as a monk, which is nice because it means I'm only 37 years old, even though I look 60 or whatever, feel 60. But at this rebirth, you just get born as a baby and you got nothing. No material things, no money. Everything comes from the Buddha and then from Ajahn Chah. So going back to Thailand is like going back to your origins. Like Chinese New Year, you go back to your parents, your family, come together, show your appreciation and gratitude to whoever's helped you in your family. Or maybe you give your support to other family members. In the same way we go back to meet each other. And this is the sort of thing you won't hear on a Vipassana meditation retreat, is it? You don't hear teachings so much about gratitude, respect for your teachers, recollection of the qualities of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, the teachers, the role of Kalyana Mitta. You may hear those things, but meditation retreats tend to be more technique orientated, which is important as well, but then there's a lot you're not getting that you get from the monastic form and life that really is how the Buddha taught. The Buddha didn't just teach Vipassana. even though some people today will say that. I mean, he did teach vipassana, but with all the other things as well, which help us. Although some people see them as obstacles, they're actually supports for the arising of right view, samadhi, which informs our practice, leads our practice, guides our practice. You get a lot of that just from the outer form of Buddhism, which some people see as kind of a burden, complicated, just want to cut through right to the heart of the practice, vipassana. But then sometimes you need the outer form to get through to the inner truth of the mind. It's not that you need the outer form all the time, but it protects you and guides you leading inwards. So Ajahn Chah's comparison was the coconut. You go to market and you buy a coconut and it's got a husk around it, which is hard, hairy. You don't eat that, but you need that. You carry the coconut home holding the husk. And maybe your friend sees you and says, "What are you carrying this coconut for? You're not going to eat the husk. Why don't you just break it open now?" And then you've got just the flesh and the milk. But of course you can't carry a coconut back home without the husk. When you get home, you're ready, you break it open and you can drain the milk and drink that. You can open it up, eat the flesh. But you need the husk to get to that point. So we need the Vinaya training, the tradition, the form, the rituals, up to an extent. There can be a cause for distraction. We can get lost in them. There can be a basis for superstitious belief, of course. There are those drawbacks which we have to be aware of. But at the same time, you want the meat and the milk of the coconut, you can't get around it. You need the husk to get you to that point. So that's partly what I get from going to Thailand, to see my teachers. You might say it's just making sure the husk is in place, protecting the inner core, rather than just dropping everything and saying, "Oh, yeah, Nibbana is all around us in the here and now." But it's a bit risky like that without the husk. Sometimes you need that husk just to preserve the inner core of the teachings. The wisdom, the compassion need to be preserved by some of the outer qualities. So just now we were talking, one of the photos that was taken of us when we were at Wat Pah Pong. I first travelled to visit Ajahn Anan in his monastery, where I used to live for 10 years after Ajahn Chah died. I went to see him, pay respects to him, ask forgiveness, which is a standard monastic practice. When you meet a teacher, you ask forgiveness, pay respects, listen with respect to the teacher, and he gave us some teachings. It sets up a really good, wholesome state of mind. It's inspiring for most people who have contacted teachers, monastics. They find it inspiring, nourishes the mind with the right conditions, so that when you sit meditation, your mind is already halfway there to the peaceful states beyond the hindrances where samadhi arises, which supports insight into the three characteristics. It's no different from the practice, and it's not separate from it. It's not an obstacle to it. It's actually supportive. So we go there first, go to Wat Mark Jan, have a look at the progress of the Chedi, their building. It's been going on for a while now, but slowly getting there. Pay respects to Luang Por Anan, get some nourishing Dhamma from him. Then we went on to after that we went to a monastery in Bangkok. The senior monk who oversees all of Ajahn Chah's monks in Thailand and around the world. And obviously we now have many monasteries all over the place. There's always someone in charge. That's the way the Vinaya works. And Ajahn Chah himself entrusted our well-being and guidance to Somdet Buddhajan from Wat Saket, big old monastery in Thailand. But he died a few years ago, so now that role has moved on to a monk called Somdet Mahathirajan, who's still very much alive. He lives at Wat Po, which is actually one of the oldest monasteries in Bangkok, other than the Royal Palace and the Royal Monastery of Pragyao, you may have heard of. So I think you're seeing a picture of us talking to him. So my joke is he oversees the overseas monks. He's like the senior monk checking up on us, giving us support. It's not like in a kind of critical, negative way. He gives support, checks each monastery, each monk if they need help. He helps to facilitate travel permission, travel permits for monks to go overseas from Thailand, oversees the monasteries, overseas. And he's very kind. And he also knew Ajahn Chah very well. He was the one who gave Ajahn Chah his honorific title. The actual word of the title is Prapodhyana, which you sometimes will see as one of the books of Ajahn Chah is called Bodhinyana. So it's a very famous word. That was actually Ajahn Chah's title given by the king. And Somdet Mahathirajan actually created that title, the Pali wording. And he's from Ubon, the same province as Ajahn Chah. So he knows him well, knew him well, and is very supportive of us and all the other monasteries. So again, going to see Ajahn Anand first, and then going to see Somdet Mahathirajan. It's like back with family, parents, grandparents, catch up. And he was very happy to hear about what's going on in this monastery, Buddha Bodhivana Monastery, Bodhipala Monastery, our new monastery in Adelaide, and just chatting about things, about the world in general. He gave Venerable Dhamma Witiko a nice talk and blessing to boost him in his practice, which is not an easy thing to attain because he's a very busy monk, and so many junior monks never get to really see him or be with him. But we got a chance to talk for over an hour and a half. We were with him talking, and we got a nice blessing and words of encouragement. So again, Kalyana Mitta, supporting in that way. Just as when you visit home, visit your parents, visit your grandparents, you get a good feeling, you get some support, you're going back to your roots. And the Buddha encouraged laity to follow the example of Sangha. So just as we bow, pay respects, ask forgiveness from senior monks, you're introducing the same qualities into your family life to counter, a lot of the negativity we build up. How many people have issues with their parents, have bad memories, fallouts with their parents maybe, or some siblings. It's important to rectify these rather than leave them as toxic waste dumps in your mind that keep coming up over and over again through your life. The Buddha said if you're still holding on to aversion to people who've helped you, parents and teachers say, it's a real obstacle in your practice. So it's not anything separate from the practice of meditation, samatha vipassana. You're clearing up toxic waste dumps of negativity towards family members, teachers, people who you've been involved with in the past is a vital part of progress in the practice. It's not an obstacle, it's a support. It comes with right view, the development of kindness, compassion, waking up to the truth that you haven't practiced alone, even though you might say, I'm a solo practitioner, I do it on my own. It's not true, is it? We've gained from the Buddha, Ajahn Chah, if you're a student of Thich Nhat Hanh, from him, and from other teachers, as well as our parents, of course. It's just natural law, natural truth, that there are those people who've helped you in the past and maybe are still helping you now. And it's correct sometimes to acknowledge that. When you make that acknowledgement, it's like that toxic waste dump of accumulated negativity, suppressed, squashed down in your mind, maybe it starts to lift. And if you get rid of a toxic waste dump, well, everything improves, doesn't it? The environment of your mind improves. You feel better. You feel you've done the right thing. You feel you've let go of some negativity you may have been holding on to. So we do these practices whether there's a need or not. Quite often you go and pay respects to a teacher, there's no need. It's not like you've been harbouring a grudge or a negativity, but just in case. And it's also mutual, it's a two-way thing. It's not like you bow to the teacher and the teacher has absolute power and authority and you just have to become subservient to some teacher. It's not like that. It's a two-way thing. There's mutual kindness, compassion, mutual respect, and mutual support. So the teacher gives you support, you support the teacher. You share views and experiences, exchange information, share the burden of responsibility sometimes. Teachers and students help each other. We share our workloads and different duties that need to be performed in our role. Maybe we share them with each other. So it's a two-way thing, it's not a one-way thing. So after paying respects to the most senior monk who oversees, looks after Ajahn Chah Sangha, and then we went to Ajahn Chah's monastery in Ubon, where of course because of COVID they had very strict regulations. They only allowed about 100 visiting monks and 100 lay people in, and that was all closely monitored, so there was no breach of the restrictions put in place in that part of Thailand, because each part of Thailand has different restrictions, but the local government were quite happy for the event to take place, but on a very limited level. Anyone who's been there before knows there'll be thousands of visitors and food stalls and people camping and thousands of monks, nuns, all joining in with talks and meditation and chanting. That wasn't happening this year. This year is a very small group of monks, small group of lay supporters, but the event did take place, and in a way it was like a holiday because there were so few people, very little organisation. So it was like a holiday for Lumpur Liam, the abbot of Ajahn Chah's monastery and the teacher there. He was smiling right through it because he didn't have to do the usual management of food, water, accommodation, toilets, wastewater, sewage, the things people never think of. Imagine you got 5,000 people camping in your monastery and 1,000 Sangha members. That's a lot of food and water and accommodation and sewage to deal with. He didn't have that this year, so he was obviously smiling greatly as we talked to him. And in this picture you can see him blessing some bronze sheets that were later to be melted into the Buddha statue for the new monastery in Adelaide. So he was giving his support from afar by blessing these sheets, just as every senior monk did that we met. We invited them to bless a few sheets of bronze which later got melted into the Buddha. And we chatted with him about this monastery because before COVID he was going to come here. He had a ticket booked and he was coming, and then the Australian government shut the border, so he wasn't able to make that trip. But he's still keen to visit and ask about how the monastery is going and the monastery in Adelaide. So we have plenty to catch up on, exchange our experiences running monasteries, teaching, practicing in different situations, and he's a very experienced teacher, so lots of things to hear from him. Talking a lot about how people get too scared and too dramatic about COVID. It's not to diminish the threat and the risk COVID has for the world, but just to see that mentally we sometimes get too attached to things because we hear the news or we get worried. So giving very practical advice about reflecting on the situation with COVID and the basics of practice. What are the basics of practice? One is respect for the teacher, which we were showing, asking forgiveness from him, paying respects to him, recollecting our original teacher, Ajahn Chah. We did our circumambulation of the stupa where the relics are kept. We had, everyone has a little group of flowers. There you see us paying respects to Lumpur Liam. So there's me, Ajahn Anand is there as well. So Ajahn Anand himself is a teacher with many, many students and monks and laity as students, but he himself also will pay respect to Lumpur Liam. And that's how it works in the Sangha. You always have someone more senior than you, so you always pay respects to them. And it's not based on personality. It's not giving a score out of 10, I'll bow to this monk because I like him. It's not done that way. It's done based simply on seniority, who was ordained first. So Luang Por Liam's been a monk for almost 60 years. Ajahn Anand's been a monk for about 45 years. I've been a monk for 37 years. So you have a hierarchy simply based on how long you've been in the robes. But it develops this very good feeling, the juniors, whether you're one reigns as a monk, 1 year as a monk, or 37 years as a monk, you can pay respects to a senior monk, ask forgiveness, show your kindness, inquire after the health, inquire after the health and well-being of the teacher. The teacher inquires after our health and well-being. So there's mutual forgiveness, mutual compassion, mutual support. And it also brings a kind of structure to the Sangha. And that actually makes your meditation very firm, on solid ground, when you have this sense of mutual respect, mutual support. It's not that you lean on the teacher or you cling to the teacher in a kind of a way of delusion or attachment. Ajahn Chah never encouraged that. But it's more just preserving some of these rituals and practices for the good of the whole community. So like the Buddha said, the Vinaya, the discipline, threads the hearts of the monks together like flowers on a garland. So I was explaining that in Australia we don't have so much access to the flower garlands that you get in Thailand that you offer to a teacher. But people do make them, but they have to use different flowers than you get in Thailand. And they'll use any flower petals they can get, so roses and other flowers, and they thread them together. And they use the same analogy, like for the Vinaya, the monastic discipline, it threads people's hearts together. People come from different backgrounds, different countries, languages, cultures. They have a common goal, enlightenment. And the Vinaya is part of the vehicle to enlightenment. You keep your Vinaya, whether you're a layperson, and a layperson has Vinaya as well, 5, 8 precepts, or a novice monk, 10 precepts, or a monk, 227 rules, and indeed other rules as well. That's your Vinaya, and it's a vehicle to liberation, the Buddha said, and it threads the hearts of everyone together like a garland of flowers. So even though the petals of the flowers are different colours, when you thread them together they always look very beautiful. It becomes something that you can offer to a shrine, a Buddha, or a teacher. And sometimes that is considered, just superstition, or what's that got to do with the Buddha's teaching? The Buddha taught everything is impermanent. You offer these flowers, that's just impermanent, it's just superstition, why do that? People that say that kind of thing. But if you remember, the Buddha said these simple rituals are leading straight into the practice of vipassana, because you have a garland of flowers. Lay people were kind enough to offer us garlands of flowers to offer to these senior monks. You offer them, they're placed on a gold tray, and they're placed maybe on a table or a shrine. And you wait a few days, they wilt in the heat, they're not moist anymore, they wilt, they wither, they go dry, they go dark, change colour. So day one they're beautiful, just like the monks are beautiful when they come together, threaded together by the Vinaya, by their faith in the Buddha. Something beautiful. Beautiful on the outside, beautiful on the inside, the qualities of the mind. But you just leave that garland and you can watch the beauty fades as the flowers dry out, and they just become papery, and they lose their colour, their shine, their aura, and then they're gone. They just return to the forest. You usually throw them out into the forest or into a pit, and they become mulch. That was a meditation the Buddha gave on occasions for people to reflect on, because you use flowers in this life to show respect to a shrine or to a teacher. So you're always using flowers. And people think, if they haven't understood it, they say, well, that's just blind attachment to rituals. Thinking more about flowers than your vipassana practice. But you have to remember, it can go into something much deeper. You offer flowers then you watch those flowers fade and wilt and disappear, and that's vipassana. And it may be something that you're seeing every day on your shrine. There's flowers that wilt, fade away. Maybe you'll become enlightened doing that, and people did in the time of the Buddha, and up to this day they use these simple observance things that they notice around them, offering flowers, seeing the flowers wilt, fade, die away. You can use that as a basis for insight. Or the mental states that arise. You develop faith, inspiration, you show respect, you reflect on the Dhamma, maybe have gratitude, appreciation. All these very wholesome states arise, but they're still what we call sankharas. They're there, but they fade, because they're still mental states. If you attach to them with a sense of self, of course that sense of self will also change as those mental states arise, pass away. But if you establish mindfulness again and reflect on that impermanent nature of a very wholesome, beautiful state of mind, but then see it as a sankhara that fades, well, you can develop liberating insight in that moment, knowing, and it doesn't mean to say that you experience appreciation and you just say, oh, it's impermanent, it's not self, not important, toss it away. Like the flowers, you use it as a skillful means to bring up wholesome states in your mind, brighten your mind, push away the hindrances to samadhi and to wisdom, reflect on insight on the anicca, dukkha, anatta, and maybe that will give you liberating insight, even just contemplating a flower or garland of flowers, as we see when we offer to the Chedi of Lumpur Chah, or offer to Lumpur Liam. So everything has a meaning and a purpose and a use in Buddhism. It's not empty or, it's not foolish superstition necessarily. It can be, of course. Some people become more obsessed with the rituals, the externals, than they need to be. But if used skillfully, it becomes a kind of structure, a kind of form that channels your mind into wholesome qualities and provides harmony in the group, whether it's a group of Buddhists, you have a group of Buddhists, they can all express their faith, respect for the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, or a teacher. Just as in the family, you have something in common, your thread of blood, being relatives, and even though you may have differences of opinion and personality clashes in the family, Chinese New Year, people come together, just like Christmas, New Year for people of that cultural background. It can be a cause for the clash of personalities to come out. It brings stuff up, we say. But then if you have these kind of skillful reflections and even little rituals like asking forgiveness, showing respect, forgiving, showing kindness, well then it's a way to let go of mental defilements, greed, anger, delusion, and it can bring you to the Dhamma. So it can become, people can get lost in it as an end in itself, or you use it as a skillful means, a vehicle in your practice. And it just gives you more wholesome inputs in your practice. So like for us, we go to Thailand, we meet Lumpur Anand, the Somdet, Lumpur Chah's Chedi, Lumpur Liam. You got a constant source of wholesome dhammas bubbling up in your mind, so that helps, gives you support and strength in your own internal practice as much as the external parts of it. After the event at Ajahn Chah, we went back to Bangkok, and we had a job to do to make a new Buddha statue for the monastery in Adelaide, Bodhipala Monastery. So the day after we were in Ubon, we were back in Bangkok, and we went out to the edge of Bangkok, or the nearby province, Pathum Thani, where there's a factory. And Lumpur Anand again came with many of his monks, and Ajahn Dhammo, who some of you know, I think, who was born and brought up in Adelaide. And many people came together and offered gold jewelry, as you're seeing. This is a tradition when you're casting a Buddha live, as it were. Everyone is there, and they boil up you get molten bronze ore, so you can drop gold in. So you see the picture there. The Buddha model, the mold of the Buddha is upside down, so the head is at the ground level there. So we are putting in all the gold jewelry that was offered, gold and silver jewelry was offered. That goes first into the head, because it flows down to the head. So when the Buddha statue comes out and is finished, you'll know a lot of your gold and silver is in the head. And these little sheets of bronze that all the teachers blessed, and we even had some from Lumpur Supa, who died a few years ago. He was 118 years old when he died, but he left us some blessed sheets of bronze. So maybe with his extra energy, this Buddha will last for at least 118 years or longer, and the monastery will last for 118 years or longer. There's Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Anand just picking out some gold to put into the ladle, which then goes into the molten bronze. And Lumpur Anand was very kind, did a blessing. All the monks chanted the paritas, and then the three of us, Ajahn Yanadhamma, myself, Ajahn Anand, we stood on the podium blessing the Buddha, doing our best to invoke the energy from the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, all the Buddhas, the 28 Buddhas going into the one Buddha, all the Devas, Lumpur Chah, all the great teachers, they all go into the one Buddha. And because it's cast in an instant, you pour hot molten bronze into the mold and then instantly it becomes solidified. So the idea is that all that good energy is instantly solidified with it. You can see us very happy. We're very happy to make a Buddha. Everyone gets happy when you're making a new Buddha statue. It's like instant joy for everyone. And just before that, you saw me splashing holy water, which is made while we chant the paritas. That's us at Wat Pong, just in front of the museum, and a picture of Ajahn Chah. We splashed holy water. It was a hot day, so it cooled everyone down, and they all wanted their bit of holy water because it was such a rare occasion to get all the good monks together. So people want a bit of that holy water on them. People were basically compelling me to give them a whole soaking. So they said, "Oh, I've had COVID for 2 years now. I need lots of holy water." So they get the holy water on their head, and basically I was drenching everyone because it was very hot, so it didn't matter. Again, people might say, well, it's just superstition, holy water, what's the point of that? Well, true, you could become superstitious, you could misunderstand it and think it's going to take away all your problems. That's not the point. The purpose is to give you a boost. It's a recollection of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, the goodness of all the devas and the monks who have gathered, blessed that water, and nobody's convincing themselves that all their problems will be gone from this water, but it's like a boost, isn't it? It's a booster. You get your vaccine booster, you get your holy water booster for your life. You still have to face your problems, you still have to practice, keep the precepts, practice your generosity, go through all the obstacles of the practice, but it's a boost. Gives you some good feeling, and definitely everyone seemed very inspired and happy that day, so they can take that happiness back with them for a while in their lives. So those ceremonies seem to have a good effect on people, uplift them at a time when they're feeling depressed, maybe about COVID and all the difficulties of that's brought. So that's basically what people were saying. They say, I need more water, Ajahn, because of COVID. You get it works both ways, doesn't it? People say, oh, I can't do the work because of COVID. I can't go to school because of COVID. I can't do this because of COVID. Okay, there's a lot of negativity. But then they also say, but I need the holy water because of COVID. So they're getting back into meditation because of COVID. I got to meditate because of COVID. I got to get blessed because of COVID. It works both ways. So we completed the Buddha, and today in Bangkok, the cast, you saw it was like covered in clay and a white plaster cast. That's broken open. Today it was broken open. So they let it cool down for a few days and they chip it away. And then today they are going to start the work of polishing and grinding any imperfections in the statue, which there'll always be a few holes to be filled or a few little burrs and bits of bronze in the place where you don't want them. They get ground off and polished. So that'll take a few weeks of polishing, grinding, and then it will be ready to send in a ship to Adelaide. And might be there in a few months' time. So that was our trip to Thailand. Yeah, a booster, a Dhamma booster. For those who need boosters, vaccines are only one thing for the body. You need your mental booster as well. So you need your Dhamma booster. So we got a super duper double booster going to Thailand, and met many friends, Sangha and laity, which we were very happy to do. Very grateful for the chance to go. Had a lot to do with animals on this trip. Had some funny interactions with animals. So like at Wat Pah Pong, they had all-night talks on the 15th, the night before Ajahn Chah's anniversary day. So there was all-night talks, and I arrived there in the evening of the 15th. And so they put me on to give a Dhamma talk at 4 a.m. So I had to stay up all night, ready to give my talk. So I ended up giving my talk at 4:30 a.m. until 5:30 a.m. in Thai. So I was on the dawn run to bring up the dawn. And of course what happens at dawn is all the roosters in the forest do their stuff. So my talk in Thai was completely drowned out by 500 roosters announcing the arrival of dawn. So I've now passed through that test, giving a Dhamma talk with 500 roosters going, And then staying in the hut in Wat Pah Pong, it was full of mosquitoes. I don't know where they came from because it had mosquito screens, but they must have been in there waiting to ambush me. So I had 2 nights of mosquitoes buzzing around my head, biting me. So that was just like the old days. So I had to practice metta for all the mozzies. And then I was sitting meditating in the afternoon, and I heard a big thud, and this gecko, big gecko, had fallen from the roof above quite a long way down right next to me. And he looked very surprised, so I got a feeling maybe he had a fight with another gecko and got pushed off, just like 2 kids fighting on top of a log or something, and he got pushed off, and he was on the platform right next to me, looking at me shocked. So I just put my finger down and said hello, and then he didn't try and bite me, he just ran off and stuck to the wall. So I had geckos, memories of them. In the old days there were a lot of geckos. There's obviously still geckos in Ajahn Chah's monastery. And then the day of the Buddha casting, I gave a talk there during the ceremony, and during the talk they had a pet monkey which up until then had been kind of quiet. But for some reason, as I started giving a talk, everyone else was quiet now. So the monkey took advantage of all the crowd being quiet, and he came down and started doing a monkey shriek while I gave a talk. So I've given a talk to 500 roosters, given a talk to a monkey, and then the last day in Bangkok we were invited to give a talk for Kunwani Lamsam, who is 94-year-old lady who supported Ajahn Sumedho in particular, and all the Western foreign disciples of Ajahn Chah over the last 30 years. She's been very kind, supporting the Sangha in many, many ways. And her family wanted to hear a Dhamma talk while I was there. So I gave a Dhamma talk to her in a wheelchair, but she came down into the garden. Because of COVID, we didn't want to be indoors, so we sat in the garden. So a very beautiful scene, trees, grass, birds, and animals. So while we were talking, there were squirrels gibbering and jabbering on top of the trees, dropping things on us, but that was okay. So more birds and squirrels, more animals there. And then the final scene was we went to a neighbouring house, and then they had a tortoise there, and the tortoise wanted to say hello to the monks. So the tortoise came up, so you might have seen a picture of me standing, and there's a tortoise called Bu Gui, which I believe means tortoise in Chinese. Bugui came up to say hello and started. He didn't nibble my feet, he was just rubbing on my feet, so I stroked his head. Taught us in Chinese Buddhism and Chinese and Thai culture is a sign of longevity, old age, wisdom, because with longevity, long years, many years, you get a lot of world experience. So it's a sign of wisdom. So the tortoise maybe is just coming to say goodbye, wish me well, share its wisdom with us, I don't know. And then we went to the airport after that and arrived back in Australia safely, and I'm here now. So quite a few animal encounters as well while we were in Thailand. And of course everyone in Thailand wants to ask about our animals, our kangaroos. So there you see Bukui saying hello, rubbing his head on my feet. Interesting, he lives with cats and dogs and they all get on together, so it just shows you even cats and dogs and tortoises can get on together. So I'm not sure why human beings can't get on together. Because why can't human beings get on together if cats and dogs and tortoises can? There's Lumpur Part, you just briefly saw him. He was blessing 8 Buddha relics which we have brought back with us. We went to see Lumpur Part as well, I didn't mention that. And he knew we were making a Buddha statue, so he offered us 8 genuine relics of the Lord Buddha, he says. So we're very blessed and fortunate. I brought them back here, and they will be going to Adelaide to be enshrined inside the Buddha statue that will arrive later in the year. So Lumpur Opat is well. He's 90 years old this month. In February he'll be 90. And he sends his blessings and greetings to everybody over here in Australia, and I'm sure in Singapore, Malaysia, UK, wherever you are, he'll be blessing you as well. Don't worry, it's universal world blessing. And he always chuckles, Lumpur Opat chuckles when you tell him about other monks, and he asks, how are they doing? And you say, oh, this monk is a bit ill and that monk's getting old. And he'll chuckle because he's older than anyone, but he's still full of beans, full of energy, going strong, teaching every day. He's building a new chedi in the monastery, full of energy. So it was nice to see him, and he was kind enough to bless Buddha relics for us to have here in Australia. So I've got on a bit about this trip. Maybe that's enough for tonight, but we do have Q&A session after, so you can also ask me about anything during that. But maybe for now I'll just say this much.